Welcome back to the Bigwater podcast. I'm Ross Robertson. We're doing all things fishing, as you know, but today we're going to have to talk about it. The wind's blowing like crazy, but that doesn't matter because we've got my buddy here who probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the wind blowing, and that's Kyle Messier from down there in Florida. I mean, tell me what is good in the world of fishing right now, Kyle?
In Florida, it's good all day, every day. You never have a bad day, especially with 360 days of sunlight. In my neck of the woods, we fish for over 15 different species of fish every single day, both inshore, offshore, nearshore, everything from redfish, speckled trout, snook, to gag grouper, cobia, triple tail, and kingfish. Life is always good here on the Crystal River.
You know, sometimes those fishing guides are like used car salesmen a little bit. You know what I mean? We've got to talk these people down because they're seeing, now on social media, people are seeing these things on there and they're like, man, I've been watching the last 3 days, you know, you didn't have any big, redfish on there, and oh my God, and I'm coming, should I cancel? I mean, do you ever get that where people are now, where you didn't have that before? You know, they're looking at social media like, no, I just didn't put the pictures up because there was boats around, or I had some kid who quit fishing, or a guy showed up drunk, or, I mean, do you have any realities like that, or?
Well, you know, all of our customers always think that every day is supposed to be like a TV show. They think they're going to set a world record every day. That's just not the case. You know, we post awesome pictures day in and day out. You know, a lot of times we're fishing for maybe 10-inch snapper or 12-inch sheepshead. And some days we're fishing for 30-pound redfish or 20-pound snook, 100-pound tarpon. It just doesn't happen every day. But, you know, we do have our Facebook stalkers out there. But luckily, you know, we're in a beautiful location. We catch fish regularly every day. Every day you're not going to set a world record, but you have the opportunity to do so.
So let's back up from the beginning, because you've been doing this much like myself for nearly 2 decades. And if you do anything for like 20 years, I don't care what it is, you're probably going to hate it, love it, hate it, and then have some really good stories. And we're going to get into the stories later. But I think, you know, we have different paths on how we got there, but a lot of guides, a lot of good guides, I think, have a somewhat similar path. And you kind of bucked the system. You had a family that was more into the, you know, probably, I wouldn't say, at least mine wasn't supportive, but they weren't not supportive. I think it was just more of like, there's no way to do this. There's no way to make it live. It's too difficult to do. Is that kind of like how you kind of, give me the intro behind the scenes when you rolled in day one on this deal?
So ever since I was a kid, I fell in love with a show called Walker's Cay Chronicles back in the day. And, you know, that was a very successful show down here in the South. It probably was successful all over the place.
Was that Flip Pallet?
That was Flip Pallet, who is actually my neighbor here just north of me, 7 miles in Yankeetown. But that show just kind of catapulted it. You know, watching a guy go ahead and stalk a tarpon or stalk a redfish in a beautiful area, just the whole setup, the whole scenery. I mean, I fell in love with it at a young age. So I begged, pleaded, and borrowed from my mom and dad to buy a boat for me. And luckily, I got one when I was 13 years old. All of my family is extremely white collar, but I really was hell-bent on being the black sheep of the family. So my first job as a kid growing up, 14, 15 years old, I was lucky enough to work at a fish house where I was busting up nasty, rotten grouper heads and pig feet, you know, basically chopping up baits.
Wait a minute. You didn't start on a TV show at 14? That's what people think we do, right?
Oh,
you just started like this.
I only wish. So no, my hands have been dirty ever since I was young. But I had an opportunity to learn the water from some really, really salty old timers. You know, when I say salty, I mean you're playing the part. I mean, he looks like Lon John Silver's, you know, rocking the serious beard. He's got mullet in his beard. I mean, it's just, these are some really nasty dudes that eat, sleep, and live fish. And, you know, when you're learning from a guy that's been at it for 40 plus years, 50 plus years, where his living depends on it, you learn a lot over time. And just gradually I learned, and I was able to fish some tournaments when I was in high school, where I won some tournaments, and then slowly worked my way into guiding. And at 20 years old, after I graduated and worked my way into college a little bit, finally got a really good guide boat, established a business, Red Hot Fishing Charters, worked my way up to creating an even larger business, Florida Fishing Adventures, which I sold last year or 2 years ago. And so it's kind of catapulted me to be a guide that is capable of targeting many different species, many different ways, and broadening our sport here locally.
So you sold your guide service. I mean, I guess we jump right into that. That's a unique thing because you're not exactly, you know, I mean, you're a grizzled vet by the years, but not by, you know, days on this earth, right? I'm sure there's enough old farts that would be like, son, you're an old enough. Around here, we got a golden buckeye, they call it. You get the card when you're old enough, you get golden buckeye.
Oh, sure.
We're not anywhere near the golden buckeye, even though maybe we look like it a little bit at times, right? So what was the process on that? That had to be, you know, you build these things up. I mean, that's like your baby, and obviously everything's got a price because you can still go fishing, but that had to be, give me a little insight on that. There had to be some serious conversations with the missus, and down to Jesus with
So
yourself.
yeah, so right. This is a guide business. This is something that a lot of people do because they love it. And to me, it wasn't just fishing. I wanted to build this up as a business. So I maintained my email addresses and created a substantial emailing list. I ran multiple websites. I had one point in time I had 4 websites. In my day and age, most of the guys that were doing business with a handshake and a business card. But when I stepped in 2002, I was establishing websites and establishing relationships, going out and marketing myself. And the more you tap in and build up a marketing strategy, the more you build up a clientele, the more your web presence build. I was capable of kind of offering something to somebody in a sales package that I could sell to them. That being multiple websites, multiple domain names, a client list. Now, for those of you, keep in mind, the business is the guy, the person who's building the relationships. My customers have relationships.
That would be my number one question for you. You know what I mean? I mean, I've got people that probably not good to say out loud, but if I didn't catch fish 5-10 times in a row, they'd be like, well, there's a reason, because we're like family, and half the time we're busting chops, shooting the shit. You know what I mean? They're okay with what I do. And there's some people that probably, leave because they're not. I'm sure you've had that too, where you just, personalities don't line up, or, and then some people maybe stay just because you're that good at fishing. But I think it would be tough. I mean, I don't know many people, that's why I'm so intrigued about this, that have sold a business that not only are so young, but because Kyle is the face of this deal.
Yeah, it was an interesting predicament. It's really the luck of the draw. I caught a customer of mine in a perfect opportunity. And let's face it, the economy has been doing great for a number of years. People have a lot of disposable income, and they spend it freely, not necessarily wisely, but freely. And, the dream for a lot of people is to come to Florida, to live in this beautiful area, and to fish for a living. So I was lucky enough to have a customer of mine for over 10 years who I'd fished with him and his son since he was 8. Just buy him a business, once he turned 18, and, he's been rolling with it ever since. So luckily he's doing well. My non-compete ended this year, so I was able to keep, which my non-compete was only 1 year. So I was able to keep the majority of the good clients who I built up relationships with. But here again, the kid that bought my business, he was also to build up some good relationships. And both he and I are really happy and both doing well here in Florida.
I mean, that's an amazing deal. I mean, honestly, not to be the bearer of or say bad things or go negative on this, but yeah, that you guys could stay afloat, because I would think a lot of my guys after a year would be like, all right, we're back with Ross. What's up? I
mean, well, it was. It's more than just. Portion of the business was me, but I also had a dozen guys that worked for me. We were doing close to 800 or 900 referral trips a year, on top of the 250 plus that we were doing, that I was personally doing. So it was just the logistics of the situation worked out really well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I could see it. You're kind of in a different deal too. Not that you don't have our down times, but where I live, I mean, you've got times where you ain't launching a boat. You know what I mean? And I do, some ice guiding, but then we get like this year where we don't have ice. So it's a much different thing. But I also know that a lot of what I'm going to call our downtime is probably not the time you want to go to Florida, because the windy season, or just maybe, well, we aren't really going to catch this realistically. We can go over here and stretch your string, but am I wrong? I mean, it's 12 months, but it's not really 12 months.
Yeah, we have a unique season. Our snowbirds arrive in December and they stay throughout March. Our serious anglers are fishing April. I book up for tarpon season a year in advance. That's May and June. And then come July, August, September, we have a scallop season, which is world class. There's only 2 places in Florida that you can really do scalloping. So like I said, it's just 365 days of action and activity, and people home in on it, and then they love to try it.
So I can already see this, because you're not throwing me no shade or nothing. Don't get me wrong, but I can see where you could be a little bit of a politician here. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you're a used car salesman, but every guide has to have a little bit of. And I probably don't have enough, to be perfectly honest. It probably gets me in trouble a lot. My fishing skills probably get me out of it mostly. But you've got to have the politics, whether it's in the boat or out of the boat. And I could see that you've got some probably good. I don't know, but you have to have some stories or some things with that. I don't know what you're willing to share, but because politics anymore, it ain't just for TV, right? It ain't just CNN. It's in the boat, out of the boat, other guides in the marina. I'm definitely more chill now. Maybe it's because of my rep, or guys just know not to give me some shit. But There's a lot of politics and bullshit in fishing.
Oh, you want to talk politics? I mean, the most political fishery on the planet, as far as I know, outside of maybe Key West, is Crystal River in Homosassa, Florida. When I first started guiding, maybe there was 5 guys in Crystal River, 10 guys in Homosassa. We have the Homosassa Guides Association here, which is the second oldest fishing association, supposedly in the world, but definitely in Florida, which was established back in the early 1900s. Our area catered to. Back in the day, our area was a old commercial fishing village, a very poor commercial fishing village that catered to the wealthy, coming from Atlanta, coming from Tallahassee, coming from all over. So that piece of pie was fairly small, and a handful of guys were picking at that piece of pie. Well, take it back to 2002 when I got involved in this. Well, the piece of pie has grown substantially, and these old timers are still doing the same old things that they've always done. And I stepped in and kind of flipped the script and changed things a little bit. So, as the old saying goes, most people don't like change, but change can be a good thing. That makes some of these guys work a little bit harder. But from a political standpoint, the guides in our area are getting younger. The successful guys in our area are getting younger, whereas most of the guys are getting older. So the guys that are falling out, that are getting older, their customers are retreating to younger guys, more motivated, more hardworking. There's a lot of spite because of that. And I don't say that I ever preyed upon guys that weren't doing their job. I just tried to do my best to do a good job, and some may have considered it to be a better job than others. And it wasn't always about catching fish. I'll be the first to admit I am not the best angler in my area. I am probably the best at having a conversation with people. I'm the best at relating with a lot of people. I am somewhat educated. I am knowledgeable regarding worldly things, and other people, especially successful people that have disposable income, enjoy spending a day with people like myself compared to some country bumpkin smoking cigarettes, spit and dip, drinking a case of beer before you get on the boat in the morning. And that's was part of my marketing strategy.
And just safety. I fish on the Great Lakes primarily, and that's some of the hardest. Army Corps of Engineers ranks like Lake Erie is one of the most dangerous bodies to navigate. You're on essentially Gulf of Mexico. Your ocean's right around the corner. I mean, hurricanes, tornadoes, you name it. So you've got that too. Have you got any stories where you've had some close encounters?
Oh, man. Well, we're the lightning capital of the world. Where do you start with that? You
got some buzzing rods?
Oh, well, great example. We have to jump ship. Part of our day throughout the summer, part of our strategy throughout the summer is to figure out an exit strategy for these afternoon thunderstorms, or even in the morning. You got to have an area where you can escape and hide. And it's not always at the dock. You find these random crazy places to hide. 2 years ago, for instance, we ran to somebody's personal dock. We sat underneath they have a little boat lift that was covered. We decided that we thought the storm was gone. We pushed off the dock. As soon as we pushed off the dock, a lightning bolt came down, struck the piling right beside us. This is probably 15, 20 feet away. I've got half the piling in my boat. I've got freaked out customers, and we can't get back to the dock fast enough now. That's one thing. You're talking about water spouts regularly in the summertime.
Oh, yeah, we get those.
So the lightning, it's just... There's nowhere to hide when lightning comes, and a lot of people deal with lightning differently. I've lived around it my entire life, but all it takes is one close call, and you respect lightning a completely different way.
In Ohio, and you hear about all these things, because I go down and fish the Keys, and I go down to Venice and stuff like that. You hear about this red tide in Okeechobee. Now I know that's a ways from you, but do you still have any kind of fallout, or because of that's location? Is that it's not a good thing. I don't know if this is like the Corona deal where everybody's got their opinion on it, but real deal, like what is the red tide for Florida right now?
Well, as of right now, there's very minimal red tide whatsoever. We've had one of the driest winters on record here. So, that's, when you've got a lot of runoff dumping into Okeechobee, that extra water kind of permeates throughout the tidal canals. And, they need to divert that water back through the Everglades like it was, years and years and years and years ago. When all that water dumps out of the Caloosahatchee and it kind of permeates up and down our beaches, that's not good for anybody. Luckily, we're over 200 plus miles away from any of that. On top of that, we have 7 spring-fed rivers that are constantly pushing out 72-degree year-round fresh water out of our river systems. So that constant flow really pushes that red tide when it gets here, which it's only happened once in my lifetime, it pushes it offshore. I think we've had it about 6 years ago, and it was about 50 or 60 miles offshore. Now, yes, that's a dead zone, or it was. It's since rebounded substantially, but it takes a toll on your fish populations. But getting it to come on shore, and where you see all those pictures of all the dead fish on the beaches, we don't see that here in our area, thank God. But it is 50 miles. It was 50 miles south of us. And it's a shame, because I fished up and down the coast my entire life. Some of the most beautiful places on the planet. Captiva Island, Sanibel Island, Clearwater Beach, St. Pete Beach, some of the most beautiful beaches in the world were riddled with dead, stinky, nasty fish. It's just a nasty thing to have publicized, for our state, because it is a truly beautiful area. It is natural. It is very pristine, but that situation is anything but pristine.
You just wonder, with all the fake news and all the craziness going on, how bad it is as I sit here and I look at my phone or whatever, and you're like, I know you're on the front lines. And for me, the reason I asked that question is we've got the algae bloom deal. And I get, soon as one thing happens, it's like one news organization picks it up, and all of a sudden, a lot of my contacts, guys at the TV shows or the newspapers that I know and have worked with, immediately text messages, emails, can we get a quote? Can we get a quote? And I'm like, what? Because algae blooms. Where, again, the same thing. They're like one little distinct little thing happens, and yeah, that's not good. Like the algae blooms we have are not great situation, but at least in my neck of the woods, they're much more condensed. People I got calling up, hey, or can we go fishing? Can we eat the fish? And it's like, it's so overblown, fake news, media, whatever you want to call it, say it is, but everybody needs a story nowadays. Like they need a new story. Like today, what's today's agenda? And I know that the red tide thing's not good, right? But so give me a little insight, because people here in Ohio, or we got a lot of guys in the Dakotas and Canada that listen to this. Is it really from the sugar runoff, or like what is the big? I hear big sugar, and then other people say that's got nothing to do with it. What's the real deal?
It depends on who you are. If you are a homeowner, you're going to blame the sugar farmers. If you are the sugar farmers, you're going to blame the homeowners. You're going to blame the homeowners with, fertilizing their lawns. Let's face it, everybody in Florida likes a beautiful, green, grassy yard. The sugar farmers, they've got to take care of their crops. They got to, clean everything out. The sugarcane farmers, by far and away, are the biggest culprit of this whole fiasco. I mean, they really are. They're the ones that are dumping and draining all their excess filth into Okeechobee. They're the ones that are, dumping more water in there, forcing the locks of Okeechobee to kind of release back into, our filter creeks, which filter back into the Gulf area. So if I'm going to point the finger, I'm pointing it at Big Sugar. If I'm going to point the finger at somebody else, I'm going to point it at our state government for a variety of reasons. I won't get into politics, but they should have purchased a large enough pieces of property years ago when they had the opportunity to give Big Sugar the piece of property that they needed to be able to dump their water into a safe storage area. And you're talking thousands and thousands of acres. You're not talking somebody's 20-acre farm to dump their excess in. This was a big piece of property that they should have purchased years ago that they did not. And now they're kicking themselves in the rear for not doing so.
So I'm just going to throw the shit on the wall now, because you said one little thing that maybe a normal passerby would not have picked up on, but me, I was all over it. And you said, and the reason I'm going to bring this up is that somebody put some comments. I had two people who had no clue who they are, were fighting with each other on comments on one of my social media accounts, my business pages. And I just sat back and just was like, a guy told me a long time ago, he said, the problem with, getting down and rolling in the mud is, he said, before long, you won't be able to tell the difference between the farmer and the pig.
Not the truth.
So, the long and the short of it is I had a video where I let a fish go. And the guy was like, two separate incidents, but same deal. And the guy was like, oh, now you think you're cool for letting fish go. And then all it was just a release video. Here's a nice fish going back. And so on one end, a guy's busting my chops because I think I'm too good because I'm releasing a fish. And then I had another guy who obviously has no clue on what I do, because he made a comment about, basically in so many words, he says like, oh, you're going to release that male, but you keep all those big females. And it's like anybody that's watched, and I know you don't even know, but anybody that's watched my stuff is I've let more trophy 10-pound plus walleyes go in the last 20 years. I'm very confident in saying no one will step up and say that they have caught as many and released as many as I have, because I don't eat them. I don't care to. It's my personal thing. You know, I know you guys down there, we'll talk about this a little bit. There are certain things that maybe the state has stepped in and said you're not going to keep it or do it, but you guys impose your own stuff, which is where I'm going for you. Same thing with smallmouth up here. Like, we got a lot of big, giant smallmouth bass. Them fish are old and big, and it's like, who eats those? You know what I mean? So, and there are guys that nail them up, put them in coolers, and it's just like, are you really just going to catch and kill to catch and kill? So, again, I know these are personal things, and I just wonder how much that affects your business, because unlike the knuckleheads on my social media, I just let that go. I mean, you can't roll in the mud with they get it or they don't get it. If a guy's going to bust your chops for letting a fish go, that's not a conversation you want to have. But I know you do a lot of catch and release stuff. So what do you mandate in your boat, or what are some of kind of your rules? And I'll tell you some of mine afterwards. But I mean, how much does that change, or just give me the insight on the catch and release, or what you self-impose, if anything, in your boat?
So, you know, if you, when you look at a magazine, when you look at a TV show, you very rarely, if ever, and I would never know. I mean, you don't see images in a world-class magazine with some two jabronis sitting next to a table full of dead fish. You just don't see it. That's not picturesque. It's not pretty. And as a matter of fact, a lot of guys in our area that do that, they end up losing business over posting pictures of all these scattered dead fish everywhere. It doesn't make any sense. In Florida, you could do it every single day. You can do it with multiple species a day. So here again, this is how I feel. You know, I enjoyed the Walker's Cay Chronicles, like I had mentioned before. I enjoy all these magazine shots. So if you look at my social media pages, they're all of these picturesque places with a beautiful fish right before release. Now, we do keep fish from time to time, especially we keep enough for dinner. I'm not going to go and slaughter the entire Gulf of Mexico so you can feed, do a fish fry for your community, for your neighborhood, for your church. It just isn't going to happen. That takes the fun right out of it, because you want to catch and kill everything in the ocean today. When you come back next week, you're going to want to do the exact same thing. And that's not possible all the time. So the state of Florida is very, 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 very generous with a lot of its species. I'm about as conservative as it gets when it comes to handling, catching, and killing fish. I've imposed boat limits on my boat and all of my guides for years. No catching and killing snook. 1 redfish a person, angler limit only. Angler limit only of trout. No more than 10 Spanish mackerel, no more than 10 sheepshead. These are all, sheepshead and Spanish mackerel, these are all species that you can catch and kill 15 per person, okay? That's overkill. What are you going to do with 15 fish? You know what I mean? One and a half fish will feed a person. Actually, 1 fish probably will. Why do you need 15? A lot of these fish don't freeze well. It doesn't make sense to catch and kill all these fish. So I've been pushing for a long, long, long time through an organization that we've got. We have the Coastal Conservation Association here in Florida. It's actually all throughout the Gulf Coast. It may be up in your neck of the woods for all I know. But it's basically an organization that does its best to try to make anglers aware about what they're doing to their fishery. If you go out there and catch and kill everything that swims, that excellent fishery that you once had will no longer be there. And I promote that religiously on my boat throughout the day. You know what? We have a great time in a beautiful area. The catch is what you're here for. That release is what you're after. The next guy wants that fish to be released as well, so he can have an opportunity to catch it.
The funny part is most guys don't even have to do what I do and have enough balls to have this conversation. And I think where I'm at on the Great Lakes, it's much different than you. I think that we got just bring them on.
Come here. This is my son, Chase Tarpon.
Chase Tarpon. Now, your daddy's serious if he names you after a fish, right?
Chase Tarpon Messier, born during my tarpon season, May 29th. He is my little tarpon boy.
Your wife is a saint.
God bless her. God bless her. All right, shut the door.
But, what I started to say there was, it's funny that I know that if I wasn't in the situation that I am with, my standings in the community, if you will, and fishing and stuff, that it would be suicide to even have this conversation with you about conservation stuff, because I also do not let, people take my limit, okay? Partially because it's technically not illegal. It's a very gray area because of possession laws. It's not illegal in the long run, right? But people, it's like a battle in the marinas around here. But I think it's what holds us back and why Florida has a guide association. We don't have that. I think it's around us. There's a ton of fishing. Michigan's, where it's got. I think only number 2 to you guys for most registered boats. There's more charters on the Great Lakes than just about anywhere, probably except for you. Maybe even more. I don't know the technical number. But Ohio has more guide permits than the rest of the Great Lakes put together. I mean, there's just millions of guys doing this. It's a sport fishing mecca of up north. But yet these guys can't get together and have some practices and principles where I don't think it's like some crazy tree hugger deal. You know, some of the companies I work with, which I won't say just because I don't want to bring them into the middle of it, but, you know, that I'm sponsored by and do work with, well, they specifically say, do not send us pictures of dead fish. Do not send us pictures with a gaff in them, which doesn't apply to me, obviously. But, you know, do not send us a picture of, you know, blood on a fish, because they're promoting the catch and release. They're promoting it's a 401k. Let's the next generation have this. This fish took 30 years to get to this size or whatever it may be. And it does seem short-sighted, but I also think that it's the hard thing for guys like us, but it's the right thing to educate these people, because most times when you explain to them, hey, this smallmouth bass tastes like shit, and it's 15 years old to get to the size, and we can catch that fish 4 or 5 times, you know, like I can come back, probably catch them on that rock next year. Most people are on board, but you have to have the balls to have that conversation.
I agree. I honestly think it's a generational thing too. I think if you're, you know, that 60, 70-year-old range, you know, where you've been used to catching and killing everything that you possibly could, you go down to that next generation, that 40 to 50-year-old, they're a little more conservative. And then you get into the generation like me, you know, the early baby boomers. You know, we're very fairly conservative people regarding the catching and the killing the thing. You know, the guys that I'm around, the anglers that I take fishing that are my age, the 40 and unders, they want to see that fish release. So majority of my business, and this may shock some of your followers and some of your listeners, you know, majority of my business has now become catch and release. It's probably 60-40 now, and I'm glad it's that way. And you know, in that 40% that's catching and killing their fish, 90% of them are catching enough for dinner. So I think that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I'd hope that more people would think along the conservation lines than just the catch and kill thing. It doesn't make any sense, and it defeats the purpose of actually going out and fishing, not killing.
Well, especially now, it's like, you know, you can take your cell phone and get I mean, I've shot magazine covers with my cell phone. I mean, you don't need some fancy stuff. You don't have to. I mean, you can take a cell phone, take these pictures. That memory, heck, you can put it on. You can take it to Costco and put it on a tarp. I mean, you put it on. You know, it's amazing all the things that you can do with a simple picture now to make that memory. You don't even have to spend $500 on a mount. Or God, if I did catch a giant tarpon with you, can you imagine what that would cost? You know, to have done. If anybody would even skin mount it anymore, I don't even think, you know, legality wise. If
no.
But it's crazy to say that, but not that long ago, these were conversations that were being had, right?
We still have them to this day. You know, our tarpon season comes up in May, and it is a world-class destination where fly anglers come from all over the world to target these big fish. The 3 largest tarpon ever landed on fly still to this day are in my backyard: 202, 198, 196. These are all fish that are 20, 30 plus years old. All were killed, all were taken a picture of dead instead of alive. Yes, they got a lot of praise for catching a big fish like that, but yes, they took a lot of criticism for killing a fish like that. I mean, just think of because these are mostly females. Think of the amount of eggs that were killed. Think of the amount of you know, that fish was great regardless if it was dead. If it was alive, it would be an even better story because somebody else would think that they'd have an opportunity to catch that. Starting in May, there'll be guys out there with these huge tuna gaffs on 17-foot flat skiffs looking to do the exact same thing, catch and kill a world record, and it's an absolute shame.
Yeah, and I think that's where the guide, like a good guide, comes in, and not a guy that's taking your money to go fishing. You know, like you said, doesn't play the full part of just, it's how many fish did I catch today. It's about the experience. It's about having fun with them. It's about educating and teaching a little bit, showing them stuff. You know, driving over, show you this little landmark or whatever it is, because that it's a travel experience at the same time for people. You know what I mean? They're just like me. Right. I mean, I've traveled the world fishing. I've been very fortunate to go with a lot of the guys who are the guy at where they're at, and you learn so much about different things if you just shut up and listen and observe what's going on. And, you know, like I guess one little point, like for me, and I think it's not necessarily that you have to release everything, because there are certain things, like one of my takes on this, I think, as I explain it, at the beginning, you're probably gonna be like, nah. But like when I have in the springtime and we've got a big old fish that's about dead, like our walleyes don't live that long, right? And I've got a girl who has got a fish that's probably the biggest fish she'll ever catch. Some 10-year-old girl, 12, doesn't matter, wife, daughter. And you got that thing, and they're going to hold it out of the water, and they're dropping it, and they're doing this and that. I got grippers and things. You're better off to say, hey, do you want to mount this fish? You know what I mean? When it gets to that point, but we're not going to, because I may have the ability that day to catch 15 or 20 of those fish of a lifetimes, like at certain times. You know what I mean? Same thing when bass are on the bed. So it's like, I kind of look at this, and again, maybe you don't agree with it, but like that fish isn't of, as our fisheries guys say, you know, that fish only spawns every third year. I want this girl to have good memories. I want her to have the pictures like this of the trip. I don't want to say, no, we got to, you know what I mean? But at the same point, when you're doing that, you're essentially killing the fish. So even if you let it go, you're people, I see them all the time, they're throwing back dead fish and it makes them feel better. But it's like, no, you didn't handle that fish properly. If you want to do it, you got to do the whole part. You know what I mean? Don't bounce them off the bottom of the boat and then throw them over to make yourself feel better. The fish is dead, dude. Like, you're going to see him floating in the harbor tomorrow. So I'll sacrifice, if you will, one of those. And, you know, those are some of the things that people see online. It's like, no, I really didn't. Yeah, you want people to have that experience. They're going to put that on that wall. They're going to look at that for 30 years because it wasn't the fish of a lifetime, although it was for them. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I mean, I'll one up that just a little bit with what have done in the past. To get my mugshot in some of their pictures, especially if I know that a kid can't handle that fish or a woman can't handle that fish or doesn't want to handle it, I'll actually hold it for them. And a lot of people, I can't tell you how many Christmas cards I've been in due to these big fish pictures.
Which is a shame for their family because, I mean, you know, you're clean cut now and everything, but, I mean, you don't look like an axe murderer, but, I mean, I wouldn't want you in my Christmas. I mean, I got no problem with you.
The best looking guy you're ever going to have on this thing. Come on now. But listen, it's the truth. You know, you could teach these kids how to hold it. You get into these pictures, boom, you take the picture. I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong. I'm just telling you what I do. Get in the photo with them. Get up close to the beautiful wife. Let her smile her mug off, and then guess what? You're on a family Christmas card for the rest of your life, and you're going to be remembered forever. So, you know, and I'll take a step further. I'll actually take that picture, and I'll personally send them Christmas cards or a happy birthday card throughout the year. It's just something that's there and that you can use as a marketing tool for them to remember you as.
How can two guys talk for this long and not have a really good fishing story? Like, I mean, you know, we might have a mutual friend that might have given me a few things that says, I think you should bring up this. But I don't, what would be your story before I dig into my bag of tricks for a guy that's been there, done that, and seen some, whether it's funny stuff or insanity, just throw it at me. And I don't want you to, you know, don't cut no corners, don't shade nothing, just give it to me.
Well, you know, in Florida, we've got 365 days of sun or close to that. So we see a lot of TNA. We see a lot of beautiful people. I am the head guide for a nudist colony here in Riverview, Florida. Some people may think that that's a glorious position to be in, but I can tell you right now, there's not one person that's ever stepped on my boat from this nudist colony that I would ever want to see naked. You know, it's crazy. Luckily, they've all kept their clothes on.
Okay. I was wondering, just from a sunburn standpoint, or?
Well, you know, it's a little odd. It's odd. They ask ahead of time, and I'm just not comfortable with sharp objects next to swinging things, if that makes any sense at all. So it's one thing to pull a hook out of your head or out of your arm.
So you went to eliminate the awkwardness. You went the whole safety route. See, I told you you're not a used car salesman, but you're savvy.
Yeah, you know, you got to think of things. You got to think out of the box a little here. But no, luckily we had that conversation ahead of time. It never got awkward, but it would have very quickly. I've had some extremely beautiful women enjoy sunbathing and fishing in with their tops off. Fantastic. Probably my best guide story of all time, maybe my worst guide story of all time. And for those of you that have a handlebar mustache, I'm a firm believer you guys are all trying to hide something. My father-in-law's got one. I'm a pretty firm believer that you're all trying to hide a permanent frown, which may mean that you're a very unhappy person, maybe not on the outside necessarily, but on the inside. Beautiful day of fishing. I fished with a grandfather and his brother-in-law for a day. The grandfather I'd fished with for years. The brother-in-law I'd never fished with. Throughout the day, we're catching a lot of fish. We're having a great time. We've got this big, huge school of fish on the surface in a feeding frenzy. There's probably 1,000 fish on the surface all feeding at once. Unbeknownst to them, I knew it was all a school of jacks, maybe 5 to 10 pounders. Not a world-class catch by any means, but it's still a lot of fun. The grandfather makes a cast, boom, hooks a fish. Brother-in-law makes a cast, hooks a fish, boom. Grandfather gets his fish in. No big deal. It's fun. Well, the brother-in-law swears up and down he's got the fish of a lifetime on. I knew it was a small jack. He didn't. He thought it was a fish of a lifetime. We get it up to the boat. I go look at the line. I grab the line. Never even thought of a net. The fish gets off. I made the mistake of saying, good, let's go get another one. Well, he took good as I was glad he lost his fish, and he proceeded to throw my rods on the ground, proceeded to cuss me up and down, just completely made an absolute ass out of himself.
But you meant like literally, well, that's easier on us because now we can get back to getting another one. The fish isn't going to get hurt.
There's 1,000 fish in a school. You can't mess up. Make another cast. You're going to catch another one. Quick, simple, and easy. It's not a big deal at all. Nothing personal. I've said it 10,000 times since I've been doing it.
As have I.
And so it's no big deal. Well, he took it personally, very hateful, very hurt. We redfish, we trout fish. We catch a lot of fish this day. I mean, this is a very, very, very good day of fishing. So at the time, I'm picking up at a very popular resort. It's nothing to see 30, 40, 50 people come down to our fish cleaning table to see what we've caught, interact with my customers, interact with me. We hit the dock. I'm unloading my fish. I'm interacting with people. This guy is handlebar mustache guy is in his own little world just stewing. He's mad.
So is somebody back in the other room.
Daddy Daycare today, my friend. Daddy Daycare. So long story short, I tell the grandfather this guy's not allowed on my boat any longer. No big deal. Guy comes around the corner to pay me, hands me some money. And with a 30-person crowd, he decides he's going to put his finger right in my face. Boom, boom. You MF this, you MF that, you MF this, you MF that. And this 65-year-old man is ready to kick my ass over a great day of fishing. And luckily there was people there to pull us apart, but that situation could have got really bad really fast. And he would have probably kicked my ass for whatever it's worth. This 65-year-old man was jacked. I would have given him a run for his money, but it would have been an interesting scenario to say the least.
You take them to the water, Kyle. That's what you do. You take them right to the water because they're not as tough in the water. You know, that's our deal. We're like Navy SEALs to these people.
There you go. Right.
You got to get them in the water.
That.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, everybody's heard a lot of mine, so I won't throw out too many there until you poke at me. But what about there was a bikini? I did a little research here on you. Bikini, unlike me, or something.
Oh my God! You know, it goes all over. I've seen mankinis, bikinis. I had a guy get on in the wintertime. He was late for his fishing appointment, so he decided to wear a pair of shorts and pantyhose. I mean, so I got a guy in full-on pantyhose, as if he thinks they're going to keep him warm. Now, mind you, I don't know nothing about pantyhose. I've never worn them except on my head. But I can tell you one thing. They probably are not going to keep you warm.
I'd like to hear the story about when you had them on your head.
Well, come fishing with me. That's a great story. They didn't start off on my head. I'll put it to you like that.
That makes me feel better. I mean, because I think you're a lot of things, but a bank robber isn't one of them.
No, not today. Not today.
How about, like, I don't know if you got one or not, but I mean, how can you, again, from a northern boy, right? I know you're in northern Florida. I actually shot a TV show over on Pensacola there in the Panhandle. I know that Florida is like 10 countries because it's so different as you go down. And I know the Keys, as they call it, what do they call it? Key Weird or something? But
Key Weird?
You've got to have a Key West story. As a Florida guy, I just assume you do.
Oh, my God.
Did I hit the nail on the head?
Well, so you got way too much information than it sounds like. Whoa, man. So I was down in Key West.
I'm connected.
What's that?
I'm connected with fishing people.
Oh, Jesus. So my house flooded in 2016, a lot of stress going on. I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm taking me and two of my best guys. We're going to go down to Key West for a week.
Oh.
Yeah. Great idea. We only made it 3 days and we had to get out of there or Captain Kyle was going to jail. So, we made it to the Red Garter Saloon or strip club and I peed on my buddy and anyways, I'm home safe and sound, not in jail. That's a plus.
Because, I mean, I had heard from some law enforcement that you were almost going to be asked to leave Holly Weird down there, Key Weird.
Yeah, it was going to be pretty bad. It was going to be pretty bad. It was not good, not good. Yeah, well, that Key West Express could not leave and get me back to Fort Myers fast enough.
The funny thing is you tell stories like this, and these are like 1%, if that, right? I mean, because when you run as many trips as we have through the years, but you always get some funny stuff. Again, you don't have guys pointing fingers in your face very often, but yet those are the stories we want to talk about today. You know what I mean? Even though it doesn't happen. But what is, if you had one that stands out that we haven't kind of joked about, what would that be as far as good or bad or indifferent?
I've had many great days with people on the water. I've had many great days with just good people. just learning a lot of things. But the day that sticks out in my mind the most of a day of fishing, I had a guy that was here again. It's going to sound like all I do is fish with old people, but I had a guy that had to be in his mid to upper 80s, not very mobile. Decides he wants to try a shot at tarpon fishing. He just one shot. He wants to try to catch a tarpon. He's been fly fishing his whole life. I get him on the boat. He can barely stand up. He can barely move. He gets on my casting platform. Come to find out, he can't cast from one end of my boat to the other, and he wants to somehow, some way catch a tarpon. I pulled this guy around for 6-7 hours. All my guide buddies are laughing at me because I've got this old decrepit man on the bow of my boat that can't do anything right. All of a sudden, God was shining down on us, blessed us, and put the largest school of fish on the planet right underneath our boat, in casting range for this man, which is 15 feet. One cast, nothing. Another cast, nothing. Another cast, nothing. By now, I'm off the polling platform. I'm scared for my life. I am ducking behind my console. My guide buddies are laughing at me.
You have the same type buddies I do.
Yeah. He tries one last-ditch effort in a move that I've never seen. He skips a tarpon fly over the surface of the water as if it's a nymph doing its thing. And next thing you know, 175-pound tarpon comes up and eats his fly. 3.5 hours later, this guy has just landed a fish of a lifetime, and he lived to tell the truth.
Wow, that's saying something for a fishing guy.
Yeah, yes. So it was a good day. And I've never seen him again since. I hope he's still alive. But if he died the next day, he died a happy man.
And it is funny too. And sometimes I get it with people that don't appreciate it. I don't know if you could relate to this, but you get people that are like, hey, they'll come from. I've had guys that come from Australia to fish with me. I've had a guy who's doing a bucket list trip because they fish for Xander over in Europe. That came from there specifically to fish with me and target big walleyes. And you have, let's say it's maybe the fish don't cooperate or the weather or I make bad decisions or all of the above. And then the next day you got a guy who just really couldn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like he's there, but like you could catch a 175-pound tarpon and be like, oh, okay. Hey, are we done? I was going to go get a drink. And you're like, oh my God. You're just people that don't either appreciate or understand it. And you know what I mean? And they tend to get some of those, as you say, the Jesus moments of like, how did that happen? That won't happen another 200 days or 10 years. And then you get some guy that you really would want to have that day. And you're just, the odds are not in your favor. I'm sure in some level you can relate to that.
Oh, most definitely. It happens all the time. The guy that could care less always catches the wife. The husband is so focused on this side of the boat where all the fish are at, she could care less, throws her bait over there and catches the biggest fish of the day. It never seems to amaze me, which is why fishing is so incredible. Our job is so much fun. It's because it's always something different. And one day somebody's a hero, the next day they're a zero, and it goes for the angler and the guides.
So what else should we know? What have we left unsaid with Kyle that you would want out there?
I don't really like boasting about myself. Our area and our fishery boasts, it brags enough for all of us. But, I'm a very humbled angler, very decent husband. I've been with my wife. She moved in across the canal for me when we were both 15 years old.
That sounds like a Romeo and Juliet deal right there.
It was too easy. A girl jumping on trampoline. It's 15, 16. I could take the paddle boat back and forth. It was a no-brainer.
It's like an episode of The Man Show.
Oh, it would be incredible. I can't tell you how many miles I put on that paddle boat back and forth, and it was only 100 yards. But it just, humbled angler, great husband, awesome dad, and I love my area. I love my family, and I would tell everybody, come to Crystal River, come to Florida, enjoy it at least once or twice in your life. You may be a happier person.
Well, Kyle, I really appreciate your time. And why don't you let everybody know how we can get a hold of you so that we can go to some of this fantastic fishing?
You can check out our website at crystalriverfishing.com. I'm also on Facebook, on Instagram, or you can always give me a call on my phone at 352-634-4002.
Awesome. We'll put that down there too so we can get some people down there. I'm sure there's some people who want to take some downtime and hit Florida up. Who wouldn't? But we really appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody tuning into the Bigwater podcast yet again. So we might even get Kyle on some walleyes. If you guys look on social media and see him holding some toothy critters, we'll let him know that, hey, this isn't easy. Down that saltwater fishing's easy stuff. I've seen these guys tackle boxes down there. They got like 2 clear boxes. You know what I mean? I've got I need a towboat to carry all my gear because these things are so fussy. So I figured I'd wait till the last second to get that chop busting in there. But appreciate your time. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until the next episode, we are out.